Hi everyone, this is the Shop Stool Podcast, episode 10 of season 3. As always, I'm going to start by introducing my two co-hosts. Joey, how are you?
Well, great. I'm a little colder this time around because I'm out in the workshop recording, so
I did
it's
notice
getting a
the
bit
jumper.
chilly. Yeah, it's a bit chilly over here.
And Bryan, how's it going?
Oh, I'm good. I'm tucked up nice and cozy in lockdown number 6. So, yeah, all good in Melbourne.
Hopefully the last one. But I don't know how confident people are anymore these days.
No.
And my name is Robin. Welcome to the show, everyone. So tonight we are joined by Ross Williamson from the northwest of Brisbane. So Ross has some amazing pieces on his Instagram page, and I'm really looking forward to going into some detail on some of them. So welcome to the show, mate. How are you tonight?
Oh, I'm brilliant. Thanks, Robin. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks. So what I guess the best place to start is give people a bit of an idea of what you do and how you got to where you are today. Like, so what choices you made in life, whether they're good or bad, that got you to where you are now and doing what you're doing.
Yeah, gotcha. I made a lot of choices. So I've listened to your podcast a couple of times, heaps of times, basically all of them. And my story runs parallels with a lot of guys that have been on the podcast before. Didn't start out as a woodworker by any means. I was in high school. I was a high performer.
No, everyone listening, you didn't see the air quotes there.
Oh yeah, air quotes. Yeah. And I was always, directed towards uni straight out. I wanted to be an engineer. I love cars. I wanted to build cars. And my teachers all directed me towards uni, and that was where I was going to go. I love making furniture. I love woodwork. But I wasn't particularly good at it in school. And I don't think I had the best teachers, to be honest. So that probably didn't help. But yeah, I went to uni. I left school quite young. I was 17 when I left uni. I left school, so I had a year off, and I went and worked in a mine as a maintenance engineer's TA for a year. And by the time I got to uni, I was a bit already sort of angry at the world and grumbly. And one of our first assessments was to take a Victor lawnmower to pieces and put it back together again. And this was a group assessment. There was 8 lawnmowers, and one of them went back together properly and started, and that was our group. And then the assessment was actually, what did you learn in this piece? And I just went, I've spent the year taking dual power scrapers to pieces and putting them back together, mate. I learnt nothing. I learnt that a lot of mechanical engineers don't know how a small motor works. Yeah, and I failed that exam. And then it was just sort of downhill from there, to be honest. I ended up liking the pub a lot more than I liked the degree. And after 2 years, I realised pretty quickly that I was going to spend my life behind an Excel sheet, and I didn't really want to do that. So I ran away, pretty much. I ran to Europe, to England for 2 years. I was working on a farm over there, travelling, went in and out of Europe. I had a pretty sweet gig over there, actually. We had a family friend who had a stroke, and he needed a bit of help in the really tough times, like during the year of farming.
Whereabouts in Europe was this?
In England, sorry.
Okay.
So we're
gotcha.
in the Midlands in England, and I'd work on the farm for like 6 to 8 weeks. He'd pay me in cash, and I'd go and backpack around Europe.
Awesome.
I'd literally run out of cash, and I'd call him up from the train station and say, "Hey, I'm in Saarbrücken and I need a train ticket." And he'd send me a train ticket, and he'd come and pick me up from the train station the next day. Like, it was a very good situation for at that stage, 20-year-old. Eventually I got called home by the family. Mum basically booked my flight and said, "You're on this one, you're coming home," which, as it is. It was good though. It brought me back to Sydney, and then I thought to myself, well, I knew that I needed to get a degree in something because I'd always been told that. So I ended up doing a Bachelor of Business, majored in marketing. Again, didn't want to spend my life behind a screen.
It's funny that you've gone from I don't want to be behind a screen to I'm going to do a marketing degree, which is that's not where I thought your story was going to go.
No, I always knew that I wanted to run my own business eventually. The marketing degree was something that I didn't know how to run as a businessman. Like I didn't know that part, so I thought that if I got the marketing degree, then it would at least give me that. At that time, I managed to talk myself into a role in a marketing department as a junior graphic designer for a hospitality company. So they trained me up as a graphic designer while I was studying. I think after 3 years, I left and started my own design studio. So I had a design studio called Heaps Creative, and we got contracts with a couple of hospitality clients down in Sydney, and we're doing branding and marketing for hotels and pubs. And probably about 2 years into that, I met my now fiancée, Kate. And she worked out pretty quickly that I was killing myself doing this, and for no real reason. Like, I was still living in eastern suburbs of Sydney at the time, paying nearly $700 a week rent for a tiny apartment, and I was it was Sydney at that time. I was never going to be able to afford an apartment and build the business. And Kate had worked out that I'd been going up to my brother's place in the Hunter Valley on the weekends and building furniture. He had like just this pile of old ironbark railings that were all covered in black tar and just shit. And I had picked out a couple of these things that looked half decent, got an old electric hand plane and just scraped all of this black. Like, and it was thick. It was like 5 mil on.
What were they from, do you know, originally?
They were from old fences from the horse studs up in Hunter Valley. So, yeah, I made a dining table in my brother's dairy out of this stuff, and it was a relatively nice dining table. It was pretty simple, steel framed legs and that sort of pretty standard style. Anyway, Kate saw it. She's like, why don't you do this? Because you clearly actually want to do this instead of doing the other thing that just makes you into an angry bear. And yeah, Kate's got a pretty good head on her shoulders. She knows exactly what, she knew what I needed to do. At the time, she had a pretty good job working with BHP, and she just went, look, I'll support us both until you can, retrain and do this properly. So if you want to do it, by all means, this is the time to do it.
She's got yourself a winner there, hey?
Oh, mate, Kate is outstanding. She is literally,
That's
I wouldn't
awesome.
know where I was without her.
Was there an ultimatum to fill the house with lots of good furniture?
Well, that was another thing. We just moved in together, and we literally moved in with 2 outdoor camping chairs and an old iMac, and that was it.
Oh,
it was a whole house full of that. So that was the start, basically. That was the seed, and then my mum. I'd just moved up to the Hunter Valley after that and was kicking around doing some odd jobs, building stables and things. And had started collecting a bit of a couple of tools in a shed on Kate's parents' property. And then for my birthday, Mum bought me a week-long course with Roy Shack up here at the Brisbane School of Fine Woodworking. And I'd never made a piece of furniture to the tolerances that Roy allowed me to make a piece of furniture to. It was only a week long, but it was properly eye-opening to the tolerances that he worked to, and to be able to work to that tolerance as well. To be able to produce a piece that is properly exhibition quality it was a fairly simple piece. That was just his hall table course, but it was just eye-opening for me. And I came back with, reinvigorated, and I wanted to make everything. And then I got into my own workshop with none of the tools really.
Yeah.
And I could still work to that level, but I just didn't have any of the tools. And I just, where do you start when you're starting from base level and you've got nothing in the workshop? I started off with probably more than most people do. I had a $1,500 Harvey table saw, some rubbish chisels, and not much else. The old electric hand plane that had already just about given up the ghost after tackling 5 tons of tar. And I spent the next 2 years just locked in that shed, basically, just making furniture and just failing fast.
Right.
I took on, the housework. I became a bit of a house husband, to be honest. And then, after 2 years, Kate was like, "You've actually got to start making money at this, mate."
Were you taking on any work just for like anyone around the community or your friends or anything? Were you doing anything for anyone else, or just purely self-discovery?
Purely self-discovery at that point. I wasn't I'm fairly shy when it comes to getting myself out there, to be honest. I failed fast. And in the workshop, when I didn't have the pressures of clients or, even friends making things for them, you can fail fast. You can you can completely screw something up and then just, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which is a luxury that I had.
I imagine, I remember, I still make failures all the time, but it's such a good way to learn when you really cock a piece up and you go, right, this is rubbish. What can I do to it to try and fix it? Like, let's just cut the thing in half and play with an idea of how I might fix it. And did you do anything like that where you really could learn yourself some kind of life-saving tricks that you might not ever use again, but there's always that thing in the back of your head where you're like, I know I could save it if I had to.
Yeah, well, the dining table that I made, the first one, when I screwed it all together, I put the steel end frames. It had square frames on each end, and when I bolted it all together, I didn't allow for expansion across the dining table, so it ended up with a split down the middle of it.
Yeah.
And it stayed in the house for ages. I don't know, 2 or 3. And every time I came into the house, taunting. And I just left it there for a while as well. I was like, don't make such a stupid mistake again. And it stayed there for 3 years. And after 3 years, I had a bit of a lull. I had nothing particularly on, and I just went into the house one day and dragged this table down to the workshop and cut it in half. Yeah. And I literally cut it in half. And then separated the gap and made a completely new table out of it.
Nice.
That was a good lesson, that one.
Yes, everyone has had something split on them like that.
Yeah, I haven't had any more since that one, thankfully. I've learnt to be a bit more considerate of expansion and contraction.
Talking about your clients, well, your potential clients, which I think you're going to get to, I'm really interested to hear how you first started getting that paid work.
Yep. The first paid piece I did was for a friend. So she had seen a little table I made. I made a weird little 3-way joint, which sort of hammers together. It only goes together one particular way. And she saw a picture of it on Instagram, and she messaged me straight away, and she just said, I want 2 of those. And I was like, okay. She's like, I want it in American oak. I was like, all right. Where am I going to get American oak from? This will be fun. Yeah. So that was my first trip down to a timber supplier to go and, I bought 10 metres, and it was a big purchase for me at the time, 10 metres of American oak.
Yeah.
So that was my first trip down to Sydney. I drove from the Hunter Valley down to Sydney to pick up this bloody thing. I made no profit whatsoever on this piece. But that was just the very start of it. And I'd grown up in the workshop. My father was a farmer and an agricultural engineer, and I'd grown up around metal and metalworking. So I knew how to order metal. I knew nothing about ordering timber. I was like, what do I even buy? I don't know, some 50 by 50 RHS. What do you? And you just have to go through it. So I went down to Sydney, picked up that piece of timber, and it's something that not a great like if you're a self learner, if you're self-taught, how are you supposed to learn that other than going to do it? It's just experience. And now we buy it by the cube. And I have a brilliant relationship with Jim at Britain's Timbers, and I just call him up and say, hey Jim, I need, I buy relatively small packs of timber, and I'll call him up and say, I need some American oak. You know what I want? Give me a call or send me a list of things that you might think I want. And within 5 minutes, he sent me an email of what I want. And usually within a day, it's delivered. That's a way better system than what I had worked out.
And then after that, from that paid or that client, did it grow exponentially, or was it was that just one off and then it was a lull again?
It was a one off and then a lull. It was a real slow burn to start off with.
Sorry, Ross. In terms of how long ago was this? Like 5 years?
5 years ago. Yeah. So I think just that would have been not too long before I'd met you at that workshop in Sydney.
Yep.
So that was probably 5 years ago, and then it was a real slow burn after that. There'd be bits and pieces. I sold a couple of pieces to family members and things like that. It wasn't really until Kate pushed me to enter an exhibition, and she was like, "Look, you've just got to get out there. You failed fast in the workshop. You've got to get out there and fail fast selling things, because as much as she wants me to do this for the love of it, she doesn't want me to do it just for the love of it. At some stage, this needs to pay for, life." So I designed a piece for the Wuther Prize up in Mullaney, piece called Coolwah, and that came home third place behind
Nice.
Robert Howard, who is just a genius at carving, and another master carver. So as my first exhibition piece, I came third behind two master carvers in a sculptural piece, and that gave me a bit of confidence to move forward and actually produce things. And then I went and did Roy Shack's month-long course, the Cabinet on Stand course, and that was, again, a huge eye-opener to be able to produce that piece of furniture with the piston fit drawer and the dovetails in the back of it that are 7 mil across at the widest part, and it just gave me another boost of confidence that I could actually go out there and make exhibition quality furniture and finish it like that. And then probably handcrafted was the next step. Got a few sales through handcrafted. And then
we've never spoken about handcrafted on the show.
I was just about to say, what is that?
Maybe because Joey and Robin probably don't know about it, so maybe just explain the basics of what handcrafted is. Yeah, right. So handcrafted's an online collection of makers in Australia by Fred, who's a great bloke, and it definitely has its place in the marketplace. If Fred is listening, he does owe us a beer for this free plug, by the way.
He most certainly does.
Yeah.
And people can go onto that website and they'll give a brief and what their budget is, and it'll send it out to a couple of makers, and then the makers can sort of bid on it. And it's like, it's a good website.
It is a really, really good, it's probably one of the only things that I had heard of in the Australian market at that time. There were a couple of others that came along and tried it and failed, but his has sort of stayed the course.
Yep.
And the commissions that they charge makers are infinitely smaller than retailers.
Right, awesome.
It sort of gives you a chance to pool your work with other makers, so that if people come on and they don't know a single furniture maker, they can just log on to this website and see an array of Aussie makers.
Yeah.
That's handcrafted.
It's the commission thing's great, and especially with retail. We've tried retail a couple of times. We tried going with interior designers, and
it's tricky,
the commissions are just so big, and they expect you to do everything at the same time. I'm fine paying commission if they're going to pay for photography and things like that and actually do the marketing, but they're wanting me to do all the marketing at the same time. I'm like, what are you getting your commission for apart from your rent?
They're just putting it up in their store with potential eyes to see. That's it.
Then I guess our website gets some pretty good traffic, and as our body of work has grown, and I know you guys don't like Instagram all that much, but a lot of our work has come from Instagram.
Oh, don't get me wrong, we love Instagram. we just get bugger all work through.
Yeah.
But it allows us to connect to everybody, so it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best thing that it's allowed people to do, is just connect. Kate and I had we went up to Noosa and did a cruise, like a day cruise sort of thing, with all these interior designers, and as sort of a networking gig. There were interior designers and there were furniture importers on this thing, and it was me and then a boat full of women, and it was horrendous. It was the worst afternoon. But like the culture that these furniture importers had compared to us, and I'd been used to I've met Bryan a handful of times, and I've asked him to do stupid things for me just because I know him as a maker, and he's done them. And I owe him so many beers. It's not funny. But there's just that community with the makers in Australia. And these furniture importers, we were talking to them, and you're like, oh, do you find it, how's the community? How's the feeling? Like, oh, no, it's very backstabby.
And I think just because undercutting each other and stealing business, I imagine.
Yeah, whereas most of the makers in Australia we just want other people to succeed. And I think that's, the overriding fact of who we are.
I think we recognise that the stronger the craft scene is, the more likely we are to actually be able to create sustainable business.
Yeah, exactly.
And as well, like making sure that everybody prices appropriately and nobody is sort of undercutting everybody else just to get a foothold, because the sustainability of that is not it's not the way to support everybody.
Yeah, totally.
There's a wood shop just up the road from me, and the owner of that shop is very much, when you talk to him about pricing your work, he's very, very intense about it, to the point that one of the local guys here, Scott Turner from Formy Industrious, we've had him on the show. He was talking to him about this wood shop owner buying something off Scott, and Scott said, "This is what I'm going to charge you," and he said, "That's not what you're going to charge me. Try again, because that's way too low. You need to pump those prices up, because your work is worth something. Don't undersell yourself."
I hear that all the time as well. When it comes to pricing, I do think there's a point where if you're happy with the price and you're making money, what you want to make from it, then that's the price. And prices are going to vary from place to place. Like if you live in Sydney, I imagine your rent is a lot more, and so you need to cross a certain threshold, and so you're probably going to charge more because that's what you need to earn. And so there is going to be price fluctuations, but I think people generally I would like to hope people are buying from makers who are closer to them rather than trying to ship stuff all around the place. But these days it's tough to have that happen.
It's I'm quite surprised about how much up until this year, I didn't really sell all that much locally to Brisbane, to be honest. Most of my stuff went to either Sydney or Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, COVID's changed that. I've had a lot more, work in the last year has just been ridiculous. I've got, I'm looking around me now, I've got 9 chairs, a dining table, a king bed, 4 bedsides, and the rest of the whiteboard's full of stuff as well. And that's just in the last, couple of months.
And just quickly, are you by yourself, or have you got some help in the workshop?
I've got an intern at the moment, Gemma. Okay. She's brilliant. I'm on that real... I want this to be a business that can support our family. You can't do that as a single maker.
No.
It's very, very hard to do it. And having Gemma in... She's in like 10 or 15 hours a week at the moment. And she's not a professional by any means, but she wants to learn, and she's just doing the sanding and those bits and pieces in between at the moment, and it just offers me up so much more time so I can get to clients and get to the fine tuning pieces that I need to do. It's been a really great step for us. It's
a massive leap. It's a massive leap getting someone in the workshop, because you have all this uncertainty about just the pure taking up space. Like, do I actually have space to put another workbench in somewhere? And what happens when they're using the machine and I want to use the machine? And all these like really practical things. But as soon as you do it, as soon as you have someone in there, you're like, okay, why didn't I do this 2 years ago? Because it's like you say, as soon as you have someone in there who's even if they're just sweeping the floor, that's something you don't have to do, and you can sit and draw that design for another 10 minutes rather than sweep up the floor.
It's been a pretty big eye opener for us. And she's only been here for probably 6 weeks now, 6 or 8 weeks. But the first couple of weeks were a bit hard for me because I've been in the shed by myself for the last 5 years, so I was pretty used to the shed being mine and mine alone. Kate comes in and helps me when when I've got things that need to get out the door quickly just before delivery. Kate's usually the poor one that has to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning with me and get the final buff done before the delivery van turns up. She's usually the whip cracker that makes sure that deliveries happen. But apart from that, it's just been me. So getting used to someone else in the workshop did take a couple of weeks to work out and manage. Even tools. I've got my own tool set and they're all mine. And then you got someone else in and you're trying to show people how to use them. But at the same time, you're like, I've got to do something that I need that tool. So it's taken a couple of weeks, but it's starting to snowball now.
Just going back to what you said about a lot of your pieces were going to Melbourne and Sydney. Do you think that's a cultural thing, or do you think it's just they have the numbers of people, so it's just this by virtue of that fact you're going to make more sales there?
A bit of both, I think. I'd probably hazard a guess I'm not a Brisbane local, so I don't want to defame any Brisbaneites, but
but here it goes.
But I'll give it a crack. I've spoken to a couple of other people in retail industries, in retail outlets in the city, and they have said that their thoughts are that the influx of people coming from Sydney and Melbourne has sort of changed the idea that a lot of Brisbane people have around the stuff that they've got in their homes. They didn't used to have that keeping up with the Joneses sort of mentality. They didn't care what their neighbour had. Whereas now they've got, real estate in Brisbane's still extremely attractive to a lot of people because it is, great. Kate and I have just bought 5 acres, 30 minutes from the CBD, 35 minutes from the airport. I've got a workshop here. It's Valhalla for me.
No comment.
But I think there's a lot of people moving up from Sydney and Brisbane and just bringing that mentality with them. And then the people in Brisbane are realising that that's a thing that they can do too, and they can go and search out for better furniture. And their houses are worth more now, so they can actually, borrow more money and buy better things.
Do you think there was an element, or was an element of keeping up with the Joneses, or more so that, hey, we didn't even consider that we could get these things, one, made in Australia, and two, that look better, and three, that are better well made than what IKEA is selling?
Yeah, hopefully it's a mix of all of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of the clients that I've got in the last 6 months, mainly due to COVID and not being able to import furniture that they've previously been able to import, they've gone looking and found us and being like, I didn't even realise you guys were here. I was like, well, we are. Now you know we are, so you can keep buying from us. So I think, probably a mix of all of that.
I think it's definitely become more sophisticated up that way. Like when you look at the types of architecture offices that are now established in Brisbane, that previously, if somebody moved from Melbourne to Sydney and they wanted a residence design, they would look to a Melbourne or Sydney architect, whereas now they find local architects of the same caliber. Yeah, I think it's definitely become a lot more refined up that way.
Just today, I sold my crib that I made, or coaster crib thing that I made for my first child, and I had it up online on Facebook Marketplace for $400. Now, for me, that is worth at least $1,000, but that's because it's got sentimental value, and because it's not a commission piece, it's a really hard ask to ask for that type of money. So I had it up on Facebook Marketplace for months. Not a single bite. I eventually just gave up and forgot about it. Someone contacted me. I love it. It's exactly what I want. First child coming in December. Can I come have a look? Perfect. They come over. Where are they from? Victoria. And that's why I ask about the cultural thing. Do people in Sydney and Victoria, or Sydney and Melbourne, see the value in that? Whereas the rest of us, in the rest of the world, I'm up north in Townsville, the rest of us are either looking for a bargain or it's just a piece of furniture. I mean, why would you spend that type of money on just a piece of furniture when I can get it from Super A Mart for half the price?
Yeah.
It seems to me, looking at it from this side of the ditch, that it may be more of a generational thing, where if there has been a longer term, say, furniture culture in places like Melbourne, you have more generations who are used to seeing it, and it's just slowly creeping its way north as people migrate,
Interesting. But I was pretty sad to see that crib go for that price.
Yeah, well,
I put so many hours into that thing, and
you've got to learn. I mean, maybe this is a good question for Ross. Like, you got to learn to let go of every piece you make, especially when someone's paying good money for it. Like, how invested do you get into your pieces? Is it difficult to say goodbye? Because I don't care at all anymore. I just want the money.
To some of them, I can't wait to get them out my door, to be honest. I don't ever want to see them again. Bits and pieces. For my commission pieces, probably not. My commission pieces they're all bespoke for the client, and we are fairly close contact with the clients beforehand. So, those pieces, I don't see them as my pieces, to be honest. They're for the client. They're the client's piece. My exhibition pieces, on the other hand, I haven't sold a single one, and I don't particularly want to. If they do go into exhibition, they get a stupid price put on them. So, if they do sell, it doesn't hurt so much. But at the end of the day, it probably comes home. I know we don't have 2 outdoor chairs and an old iMac anymore. There's a house full of furniture up there, whether it be concept chairs or exhibition pieces. It's all there.
So I'm intrigued. You've mentioned chairs a couple of times, and I've seen on your Instagram you've got some pretty cool chair designs in the works. For a one-man band up until fairly recently, how the hell are you designing and making chairs and making more than $1 on them? Because chairs, especially the development of a comfortable, good-looking chair that you can actually produce in a way that is, time efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I see chairs, I'm just like, oh my God, do you really want to pay for a custom chair? Because, it's going to cost you the cost of a dining suite.
Yeah. I love process design. I think more than design itself, I probably love process design. I love getting down into the problem solving and the nitty gritty of how can I make this piece? And then once I've made that piece, how can I make another one? And how can I make the second one, 5 times faster than I've made the first one?
Yeah, yeah.
And then how can I make 30 of them? And reduce those processes as much as possible, leave the quality exactly the same, but how can I refine that process down and down and down and down until that point, until we reach that point where we can make chairs at a reasonable price. I say reasonable price. My furniture's expensive. I'm not, I won't shy away from that. It is what it is. Most of our clients have, the means to buy our furniture. But that being said, our the Waddella chair, I think that's probably on the Instagram page the most. It comes in at just under $1,000.
Yep.
So it's as far as a big dining chair goes, it's pretty reasonable.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That pretty much is what I say to clients. Typically, whenever someone says, I want a custom chair, I'm like, well, you're pretty much starting at $1,000. If you think about each chair as $1,000, then I'll start doing some drawings for you. But I mean, if you're thinking half that, then unless you want to order 20, then I won't even think about drawing it.
Yeah. And then it's just about refining those processes down, and I just look at each piece as just components. You break them down. At the end of the day, you're just making. The chairs are 3, 4, 8, 10. They're 11 components.
Yeah.
And a seat. Just make those 11 components.
Start at number 1. Yeah.
Yep. I love making chairs. I think they're I haven't made one that I love our Waddella chair, but there's aspects of it that don't excite me all that much. I just love having to design that 3-dimensional piece that that envelops you. You're touching all surfaces of it. Rather than a desk or a table or something that you only just sort of touch one surface, you sit in a chair and it sort of wraps around you, and you have to design for all of those pieces and to be able to walk around at 360 degrees and see every angle.
And are you designing something like a chair on pen and paper or some digital means?
I design Sketchpad. I've got tons and tons and tons of Sketchpads just full of rubbish. And then eventually there'll be one that sort of gets developed a little bit further. And then once I've got an idea that I really like, it goes to digital. Okay. So I design on Fusion 360, and then from there it goes to the workshop.
Yep.
And there are bits and pieces that you just can't develop on digital. It's you don't get those ergonomics in digital. You have to sit in it and feel it. So you sort of get the idea, go to a concept, make the concept in the workshop, which is probably thrown together in a day with screws sticking out of everywhere, and just refine those ergonomics to the right point, and then go from there.
Talking about your pieces, there is it's not really a round table, but it's as close to a round table as you could get, the Les coffee table.
He's gone off to find one.
Does that coffee table, if you rotate the top like a steering wheel, does it twist?
No.
Then you need to teach me that dark art of how to do that. Because do you know what's funny? So I made I made a dining table, round table with legs like that not too long ago. There was too much spin. Joey's had the same story. It was only a couple of weeks ago. Mike from Modern Builds, one of the guys, put out a post on Instagram to say, help, what's gone wrong with my table. Wobbly. How have you managed to not get, surely on that, because that's a very light leg assembly. There's not a lot of chunk in that. How is that not rotating on those joins?
Which you'll have to confirm for me which design it is, but is it the sort of guitar pick style coffee table? Yep. There's a bit of chunk in them. They're 30 by 30. There is a
It's
joinery.
a coffee table, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not very high. It's only 450
so that's half of
high.
the problem. Yeah, I mean that's almost all of the problem solved is the length.
Right.
If in your mind, I don't know if you've made a bigger one, but if you were to make a dining table size,
there'd be full chunk. Yeah,
you would have to beef everything up quite a bit because it's going to move.
Yeah.
And I remember because my table I made, you would lean on the top, and the top would probably twist around from the legs, probably 4 degrees or more.
Yeah.
And I would slowly twist the top and just watch the timber move. I mean, the timber is just bending, and you can't do much about it when the wood just decides it's time to move. It's time to move. All it told me was my timbers were probably half the size they needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the trick about trying to make something look slender, and you got to get rid of all the corners and round everything and make it look smaller than it actually is.
Yeah.
And it's all that trial and error of actually making it several times, I suppose.
Yeah, and you've got to look at moments, and the moment as it twists, that the force that it's twisting around, and then there's that dark art of applying chamfers to things to make things look lighter than they actually are. You can have a leg that's, if you chamfer it right, you can have a leg that's 90 mil at one edge, and then chamfers underneath, so it looks 90 mil wide, but it looks thin. But at the end of the day, it's quite a thick piece.
It's still beefy, yeah.
Yeah, and can resist that moment. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thanks for Joey for pointing that out, the height thing, because it's still one of those things that whenever I sit at that table in the evenings, me and my family have learned to live with it now. But it's always one of those, what could I have done? How could I have fixed this? Is this worth taking back down to the workshop to try and solve? And every time I see someone else suffering it, there's a horrible part inside of me that I'm not proud of that goes, yes, it's not just me.
I even told you guys what happened to my table. I saved the top. I took the top off it, and the base went off the side of the deck, and then it went into the fire.
I think we did. I think we talked about this around the same time that I was struggling with it. There's a YouTuber, John Peters, he does a lot of woodworking, and he's made a round coffee table, and the size of his legs, they were tree trunks, and I thought that's the only way you're going to get around it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Ross, sorry, I was going to interject with another question. I over the years, it's nothing that I ever planned on, but a bread and butter kind of income for me is making like TV cabinets, wall units.
Yep.
It seems like a really a niche thing that you don't seem to be able to get. Kitchen makers don't want to touch them, and general cabinet makers don't really like to do them because generally they have to be painted. And so I do a lot of them, and that's my bread and butter. And we can do them quickly, and we can make good money off them. Is there an item that you've come across that something that you're repeatedly making, or is it at this stage are you still doing everything as one-off?
We're getting a run on round bedsides. I don't know if you've seen them on the Instagram, but the fully round bedside tables.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, I've started to sell quite a few of those. There's 4 of them.
It's like a hat box type, like an elongated hat box or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, No, not really. There's no one piece. Ideally, we would like to have our own product range. Custom's great for learning and building your skill set and things like that. But at the end of the day, your hourly rate goes out the window when you start hitting snags and there's.
Yeah.
I think you need 30 years of experience in the game to work out how custom stuff goes together without it costing you a fortune.
But you did a fair bit of commercial stuff as well, like the stools.
Yeah,
you got big runs of those.
Yeah, big runs of the stools. We're starting to appeal to interior designers and architects and get those bigger jobs, which I'm more than happy to do. That's the sort of work that we're chasing. Big runs of those stools going to pubs and things. I think the last set we set out was like 36 stools in a run, which was, that's a good number. We'd like to do more of that stuff. Yeah,
so you would prefer to have, let's say 10 good designs that you're constantly turning over, and you just have like boxes full of jigs.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
I know that sounds like nightmares to most people, but as far as a business case is concerned, I think
that makes money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I love making furniture. I want it to pay for my family. I don't want it to just be a hobby that I retire to. I'll build cars when I retire.
So I would like to get you to think about going back to, because that your story of how you came up. Go back to the decision where you made, or where you made the decision to start doing this full time. Would you have done it a bit earlier, or would you have approached it differently?
Time again, 2020 hindsight. Yeah, mate. To be honest, I should never have been at uni when I was. I was ill prepared. I hadn't been prepared by the school or by the teachers or by most people. Time again, if I knew what I know now, I probably would have left school, gone and done a trade. Whether that be carpentry or whatever, just done a trade, and then pissed off to Europe for a couple of months, a couple of years, and then eventually gone to the uni if I wanted to still do uni, after I'd got out of my system whatever needed to get out of my system. I don't know that I would have ended up making furniture in that track though, so yeah.
And that's why
everything happens for a reason.
That's why I asked, because furniture making, to me anyway, it's not the same as becoming a world famous band, because we all know that the chances of that working out are slim to none. But in terms of getting a degree in marketing and getting a job, your chances of quote unquote succeeding are much higher than being a woodworker. So if you were to do your time over, do you feel like you could have improved your odds, so to speak, or do you think for anyone else coming up on this path, you've just got to throw yourself at it and hope for the best? That's all there really is. You can have a plan B, but you've just got to throw yourself at it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a different world that we grew up in now. I think you can change what you want to do halfway through your 20s, halfway through your 30s. When I first went to uni, I was with a guy there who'd been a musician for most of his life, and he wanted to be an engineer. And he was one of the best students there. Like, he was going to be a 50-year-old graduate engineer, but he did it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know how to properly answer that one for you, Robin.
It's because we're exposed to and maybe this is us living in our own little bubble, but because we're exposed to so many people doing what we do, it feels like the number of people doing this is just getting more and more and more and more and more. And at some point, the supply is going to overtake the demand, and that's why I always wonder. For people coming up today, myself included, because I don't do this full time yet. I'd love to, but is it a wise move to be dropping a steady 9-to-5 job for something like this? Or is the risk just getting higher and higher?
That's a question.
That's a question, isn't it? Mate,
Robin, you're making me question my life choices right now. Can you please stop that?
I just want to drop in here and because earlier Ross was talking about is it Kate, your wife?
Yep.
And how she said, but you go and do this, I'll take care of the bills for a while, and you get yourself on your feet.
Yeah, fair enough.
And essentially that happened with me as well.
And me.
So, and I think what you have to do, if you're really on the path, and it doesn't have to be woodwork. This applies to anything. But if you really want to go at it, you only get one life, and you only get one chance at being the age you are now, and so you need to have some financial backing, whether it's a partner. In my case, it was a payout from my insurance company because I got cancer. It's like there's a bunch of roads we are walking down, but I think to constantly have a plan B, like you said, Robin, is maybe not such a good idea. I think sometimes you need to be forced down or force yourself into a road where you don't have a backstop and there's no U-turn. It's just forward and make it work.
Figure it out.
Give yourself, like, if you can work it out. So you say, right, I've got a year to start making some money from this endeavor, whatever it is. And if I can make some money from it in a year, then we reassess from that point and say, can we make more money? Is it viable? I think that's the way forward if you're going for a passion project. I think you almost have to force yourself into the position to be successful.
Yeah, I totally agree.
See, when you talk about putting yourself out there, and like you struggled with the idea of which I think a lot of Australian makers, not to have a dig at Americans, but Americans are much better at talking about themselves in a positive light. I think Australians, it might be a sort of a post-colonial thing about just the work's supposed to speak for itself and then let other people talk about it. Can you talk through your experience of coming down to Wood Dust and doing the crit with Laura McCusker and Adam Markowitz and how that was?
Yeah.
There was somebody else as well. Who was the third?
Nick Rennie.
Nick Rennie, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was brilliant. The one thing that I had struggled with and locking myself away in a workshop was feedback. I'd make something and it'd be okay. And I'd think, oh yeah, it's okay, but it's pretty shit. And then, no one would see it apart from Kate, and she would tell me it was great, but she's my wife, so she has to tell me it's great. That feedback part is huge. And then the only sort of avenue you've got as a young maker or designer for feedback is competitions, but you pay a $300 admin fee to enter, you send your designs off, you get an email 3 months back saying you haven't been selected, thanks for your $300.
And it's usually being judged by, again, no offense to the interior designers listening, but it's being judged on very different criteria than if you're presenting your work to experienced makers who understand craft, how things are made. Yeah, it's a totally different field. But you hopped on a plane with your chair and came down to Melbourne and presented in front of 30 people, 40 people?
Yeah, exactly. I spent the day. So I got an early flight from Brisbane down to Melbourne, crated up the chair, flew it down oversized, got in a taxi, came to the event, came to Wood Dust, unpacked it, made my speech, and that was a big thing for me. I'm not a public speaker by any means. I just don't do it. But to be able to get out there and get in front of people like Adam Markowitz and Laura McCusker and Nick Rennie was brilliant for me. To be able to get that and to get positive feedback from those guys, and then pack it all straight back up into a crate and chuck it on a plane. And I was back in Brisbane by 6 o'clock that night.
And how did their feedback? So that was one of your chairs, wasn't it?
That was the Waddella chair. Yep,
Waddella. How did their feedback change either the design of the chair or the way in which you make it now? Or did it?
I didn't change it. I left it as is. I had some. There was some feedback from Nick Rennie. Looked at it and went, "That is undoubtedly Australian," which was, a nice thing to hear. Nick had some really good comments actually. Laura McCusker chastised me for using American oak in that piece because it had kangaroo leather, and then it was an American oak timber. And she said, "Why don't you use Tasmanian oak? This could have been a properly Australian piece." And I was like, well, to be honest, I had leftover American oak in the workshop, which is why.
Have you done it in Tassie Blackwood or something, or is that my imagination?
Yeah, I've got two. I sent 2 down to Canberra in Tassie Blackwood and a beautiful blue cobalt.
Yeah, that's right.
And felt. There's 9 of them in the workshop at the moment in the same colour. I can see where Laura was coming from with that, and I agree. But it was in American oak because I had American oak spare.
Yeah.
From that though, I did delve into that design, and there's a new chair on the sketch pad at the moment that's further on from the sketch pad. It's in concept piece at the moment, but that's taken on cues from there and cues from Bern Chandley. I went down and did his CT14 week-long course, and mate, that guy makes some beautiful chairs, and just the ergonomics of them, to be able to sit in a chair that sits like Bern's do, it just opens your eyes as to what you can do. I came home and just chopped a Waddella chair in half, pretty much, reduced the seat size and laid it back just that extra degree and a half, and being able to do that with Bern in his workshop was brilliant. No, that was probably gave me more ideas for feedback on the next chair rather than speaking to Adam and Laura and Nick. But they did their piece.
Yeah. Stuff. It's very brave. Like I said, for people that haven't come through sort of an arts degree where you're used to standing up in front of people and getting absolutely torn to shreds, it is a very brave thing.
They were very, restrained.
Yeah. I think the types of personalities of the 3 of them as well.
Yeah.
They understand how to give critical feedback.
Yeah.
So it's not just telling you that it's shit. They say, "Did you think about doing it this way?"
Yeah.
And then you'll go, "Yeah, I did think about doing it that way, but I chose to go in this direction." And they're like, "Oh, all right." So it's a different thing, but it is still, to get up in front of a crowd of people is a hard thing. When most makers will generally present something to a client and then tweak it just to that one client. They don't hear group feedback, and like we always say, Instagram, for all the positive thing, like it turns into a bit of an echo chamber. Any negative feedback in it tends to be seen as sort of online bullying, and it's like no, maybe a bit of negative's good sometimes.
You're allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah.
For anyone who wants to give feedback on any of my pieces, by all means, just throw it.
Address them to Robin Lewis.
This is interesting. Come back around. All right, I reckon we should leave it there for tonight. So to everyone listening, if you did enjoy the show, please go ahead and give it a rating on iTunes. It really does help us out. Joey and Bryan, always fun to hang out. And Ross, thanks so much for telling your story. It's
no worries. Thanks, guys.
It's been a really cool show, and I hope a lot of people listening have got something out of it, especially about having a plan B. I'm so glad we touched on that at the end of the show, because we've never talked about that.
No. Yeah. All right, man. Yeah, that was an awesome show. Thanks.
Yeah, cheers, Ross.
Cool.
No worries, guys.
All right, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.